Welcome, 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 everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your producer and host of the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. This is your motivational podcast of people's incredible journeys. Oh, yeah, let's do this. First, I was afraid, I was petrified, kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. And I spent so many nights just thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. Oh, no, not I. I will survive. Yes, you'll survive. Dana S. Diaz is a wife, mother, and author of the best-selling book, Grasping for Air, The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse. Dana has had lifelong experience with narcissistic abuse beginning in childhood. Her education in journalism and psychology at DePaul University in Chicago gave her the ability to accurately verbalize and express how narcissistic abuse creates confusion and conflict within victims so that she can help other victims know that they are not alone and better understand their own circumstances. Today, Dana is a proud voice for fellow victims who are unable, afraid, or ashamed to share their experiences. Welcome, Dana, to A Little Less Fear podcast.
Thank you so much. And I would have joined in on that song, but nobody wants to hear me sing.
Sure we do. We all do.
No, we do
You know you
not.
want to. I will survive.
I love it, though.
You know you have busted it out.
I would have busted it out in my car by myself, but not publicly. But I will say thank you for singing that song, because in my book, every chapter is a song title, because music
Really?
has been such a healing way for me to experience everything that I've been through in a more positive way. But I Will Survive is one of my chapters. So I'm very
and I didn't know that. I'm
excited
glad that I tuned into your energy. I felt it come
you
through.
definitely did.
Yes. That's awesome. I love the alignment. Welcome, Dana. So nice to have you here. I know that you have quite an incredible journey, and I'd like to know, and I'm sure our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners would like to know what brought you to where you are at today. And you can start wherever you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, life brought me here. The book tells about the last 25 years or so, but essentially the short version of my story is that the odds were kind of stacked against me before I was even here. I was born to a teenage mother who really didn't want me. And I understand it's scary when you're a teenager and you're pregnant, but unfortunately in the 70s, it still wasn't okay for a teenager to have a baby. So she endured a lot of ridicule and shame, and she had an alcoholic, abusive father herself. So I don't think she was prepared in any way, shape, or form to have a child of her own. But I came along. So she was always very distant with me, very emotionally detached, definitely didn't feel any kind of nurturing or soothing or affection from her. But I was okay because I had my grandma, I had great grandma, my godmother. I had very strong women in the family who were very loving. They were my mothers for me and still are, and I love them all dearly. But my mother, she got married to a man when I was 7. We had moved in with him previous to their wedding day. And I didn't know what a narcissist was back then, but he is the king of all narcissists. He's your typical, brags about everything. He knows everything. He has the best. He is the best, and just has no tact or filter whatsoever. The problem arose with me because he was so verbally abusive. And I always tell people, think about a little girl. Everybody knows a little girl that's 5 or 6 years old. Think about telling her every single day, nobody loves you. Nobody wanted you here. Your own mother didn't want to have you. Nobody's ever going to love you. You're stupid. You're incompetent. You're going to get fat if you eat that bowl of pasta. You shouldn't be eating toast for breakfast because that's going to give you middle-aged, wide-hipped, figure that nobody's going to want you then. No man's going to ever want to be with you. Just this
Constant negativity and constantly throwing negativity and bringing you down.
Exactly. Now, I was a fiery and tenacious little thing.
Yeah.
I think I still am. But it didn't serve me well back then because I would stand up for myself. I would say, you can't talk to me that way. That's not right. I mean, I think I had a better moral compass than he did to know that he shouldn't be speaking to me that way. But that would bring on the physical consequences. And those were not fun. And I don't mean to dismiss physical abuse because so many people had it much worse. But as awful as it was, the bruises healed, the handprints went away, but that verbal stuff just stayed with me. And I would go to my mother thinking she's my mother. She's supposed to protect me. But I learned very quickly she enabled, excused, and tolerated all of it.
How did she do that? How did she enable?
She would do that. Well, she would, I didn't know what gaslighting was back then, but she would be right there when something would be said or something would happen. And I'd look at her like, Mom, you just heard him do something. And she'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Let's just pretend it didn't happen. Or if I went to her privately, she'd say, oh, that's just how he is. Maybe if you don't provoke him, so it was my fault. Then it was, oh, well, I talked to him, but he said, you're just probably jealous of our relationship. You're just lying to get attention because he says he never said that. But so it got to the point where I just knew I couldn't even say anything to her because she wasn't going to take it seriously. So, I mean, certainly, anybody can imagine the anxiety, the hypervigilance I developed, always trying to assess the room when I walked in, like, is there a threat? Am I safe? I had a hard time sleeping. By the time I was a teenager, I just isolated in my bedroom, but they even threatened that. I remember one night for no reason whatsoever, they got some tools and removed the door to my bedroom so that I had no privacy and I had no way to hide from any of it. And it just exposed me in a way that's, it was just inappropriate. I mean, that's crossing a line and disrespecting a boundary. And I realized in a parent-child relationship, there's kind of that, fine line. But I think part of being a parent is allowing your child to have safe boundaries and encouraging them to set those. So infringing on them, it just felt so invasive and caused me to feel that much more, just violated in so many ways, emotionally, physically, mentally. Yeah, I just always had this idea that I was not safe. I did not feel safe. So fast forward, I'm 18 years old. I have waited for this day forever. I walked out. 18th birthday, I'm legal. Goodbye, see you later. Well, unfortunately, in the real world, you need like money for rent and you need, a place to sleep. I tried sleeping in my car at the train station. I could, couch surf at random friends' houses and even the boyfriend's house once in a while. But I kind of bounced back and forth in and out of the house until I was finally able to get an apartment. But unfortunately, I met somebody that strangely walked into my work. It was under a business relationship, and I didn't like him at all. He reminded me of my abusive stepfather immediately. But let's think about this. The childhood that I had, I was love-starved. And I think I was so withdrawn and I had such a hard time connecting with people that no guys were asking me out. Nobody was expressing interest. And I think I kind of gave off this vibe like stay away from me.
Sure.
Like I felt like I put a protective bubble around myself that nobody could come in, but I was starving for somebody to show me some kind of love and affection.
Oh, yeah.
So this aloof and arrogant and entitled young man walks in. I can't stand him. I want nothing to do with him. But a week or two later, guess what? He invites me over to hang out. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is great. Somebody's interested in me. I don't like this guy, but maybe I'm being too judgmental. And maybe it's me because it's always been me. I'm the scapegoat of everything. So I go into this situation, and I think people have figured out I was obviously a people-pleasing codependent. I just didn't know that I was. But here was this guy that wanted servitude, treated me very poorly, was very disrespectful, obviously had a very close relationship with alcohol that did not make me comfortable. But we went with it because he was the only game in town. He was my only option, and I was so desperate, honestly,
And plus, that's
to
also
be
the
with
type of
anybody.
attention that you were used to as a child.
That was the
Even though it
type of
was bad
attention.
attention or not the healthiest attention, it's still what you were used to. So in a strange way,
Yes.
in a I guess in
It's familiarity. It's
exactly
comfort.
right. You
It's
got it.
comfort. Sometimes we snuggle with the devil, even though we, rather have a teddy bear. It's just how it
Right.
is.
Right.
It's just
Right.
how it is when that's all you know. Because the strange thing was in high school, there was a very nice young man that asked me out, and I very much wanted to go out on a date with him, but I didn't know what to do with a nice boy. We all like a little bit of a bad boy. Let's just be real, but I did not know what to do with nice. I really
Yeah.
didn't, because I think I didn't I realize now looking back, I didn't even love myself. I think I had internalized
Sure.
all that negativity around me, because the other part of my childhood that wasn't coming at me directly was that, we lived in this tiny little duplex. I could hear everything. I could hear my mother on the phone with her family. I heard at the holidays when my stepfather was talking to his, siblings and nieces and nephews, creating this narrative about me that I'm difficult, and almost even saying that I'm mentally unstable, and I was always the problem, that I just always felt like it was me. I'm the burden, I'm the bother. It's me, and he would tell me as much. So here I am in this situation with this young man. And, you know, even though he was so my stepfather in so many ways, but the other part of this with him was that within a week, I mean, he told me he loved me. He promised me the world. It was forever, me and him against the world. I met his parents, who were like the loveliest people ever. And admittedly, I think I fell in love with his parents more than I fell in love with, well, I can't even say I really loved him, but I loved his mother and father. And to this day, they hold a special place in my heart, because I didn't have that. And I figured this guy can give me everything that I've ever wanted, and maybe I'll learn to love him. I think, there's arranged marriages. We don't have to be like in love our whole lives, but we'll care about each other. We'll get through, we can make
Yeah.
this work. So fast forward, yeah, we get married, we have a baby. That didn't help anything because he is a narcissist, it turns out, and he liked all the attention to be on him. So a baby kind of,
Took
you
attention
know,
away from him.
took the attention away from him. Things got very, very, very bad. Instead of things flying across the room, now he was threatening my life. He was threatening suicide. Um, it was getting really intense at home, and I felt really, really irresponsible having brought a child into the situation. That was all, it had always been that way. I mean, we hadn't been together 3 weeks, I think, when he had his first angry outburst and something flew across the room. So I knew how he was, and he had never calmed down in that way. Like I thought as he got older, he might, mature, things will get better. No, the baby made it worse. So now we raised this baby, or I should say I did, because I felt like I was a single mother most of the time. He was kind of non-present. He laid in bed a lot, sobbing, clearly had issues, not just with the alcohol, but with depression. But I couldn't help him, help myself, and protect me and this baby and raise this baby in somewhat of a normal way all at once. I needed him to be a grown up and be a dad and be a husband, or at least just take care of himself so that I could take care of this kid. Um, it was crazy. So, details about that, get the book, read about it. It's all in there.
I have a
But
question, Diaz.
yeah, go ahead.
Before we continue, for people listening and watching this for the first time, what is the definition of a narcissist?
Absolutely. A narcissist, it's a very complex thing, so I'm just going to keep it very simplistic. It's just somebody that seeks ridiculously high levels of admiration and praise. So what I always liken this to is like tumors, because there's a severity level. You can have a benign tumor that is there, but it doesn't bother you. So these are the people that are going on social media, posting pictures of their six pack or with the duck lips or whatever. And they really do look as good as they think they do. So you can't hate on them, but they're not bothering anybody. They're just fabulous and they know it. Good for them. Very, very high self-esteem. It comes from that Greek god Narcissus, who used to look at his reflection in the water. So these are the least severe. These are the good narcissists, so to speak. The narcissists, unfortunately, that I'm talking about are on the other extreme end, malignant narcissists. Like malignant tumors, will cause you some problems on purpose. They might even kill you. Unfortunately, these are the people that are in domestic violence situations often. They comprise over 20% of our male prison population in the US. They can get very dangerous. And there are some, levels in between there, obviously, but that's what we're talking about, is somebody that has a very deep-seated insecurity to the point that their ego needs this fulfillment. They need, we call this that they have to extract this fulfillment of their ego from what we call supply. And that is whoever their victim, their target is.
That's their
So
supply, and they
hopefully that
constantly
helps.
need it for their
Yes.
ego to survive.
Yeah, it's like gas. It's like fuel to the fire. So, because they don't see themselves positively. So they look to have how they want to be seen reflected back to them in some way
Constantly.
by this
And if it's not,
person.
then they feel out of control
Threatened.
and
Yeah.
threatened.
Yeah.
Okay.
They mentally cannot accept any fault or weakness or accountability. They don't understand, like I think we can, that it's part of who we are. It's part of human nature that we're not perfect.
Right.
We all have weaknesses, we all have strengths, we all have good days and we all have bad days. Good people do bad things, bad people do good things. It's just the yin and the yang of life and about being a human being. They don't understand that. They need to be held to such a high level of perfect. I mean, they just have to be exalted. Here I am looking up. They have to be exalted, like gods. And some of them actually do think they're God and will tell you that. So, it gets a little tricky when you're dealing with these people. It's definitely toxic.
Absolutely.
And that's what happened to me, because spending all this time, not just in my childhood, first 18 years of my life, but then I'm with my ex-husband towards the end of our 25 years together, I became very, very sick. And none of the doctors could figure out what was wrong with me. Started at the family doctor. She literally threw up her arms. She's like, I have no idea. Maybe it's just anxiety. Maybe
What were
you're
your
just
symptoms,
stressed
Dana?
out.
Initially, what were your symptoms?
It started in my childhood. It was always stomach aches and headaches. Really bad headaches, though. And then as time went on, I was having a lot of digestive issues. basically my digestive system wasn't working. They would call it idiopathic constipation, but when they would do the tests, they're like, you're not, releasing anything for 5 weeks at a time. I'm like, I know it doesn't feel good. It was moving very slowly, to say the least, and medications were not working. Then there were heart issues. My blood pressure was always so low. I mean, they said that, oftentimes at the doctor, they're like, we can barely even, like, it's so faint, and so they did heart tests, and I had all the, the stress echocardiogram, and they did the Holter monitor. They did all this stuff, and they found that I was really okay. My heart, was healthy. I did have a little bit of a heart murmur. I did have arrhythmia. But because my blood pressure was falling so low, I had bradycardia. So, I'd get so weak where I'd get nauseous and I'd get kind of feverish and clammy to where I'd need to lay down all the time. And yes, I was lightheaded, dizzy, blacking out constantly. Constantly. It was ridiculous. And the thing is that every doctor, I went to every specialist, and every specialist was referring me to another one, and everyone found something, but they couldn't put it all together. And I didn't want 20 medications. I didn't want 20 Band-Aids. I wanted somebody to tell me what was wrong. So I think it was my neurologist, actually suggested a functional medicine doctor. And after spending an hour and a half with me, she sent me to a lab to have 19 vials of my blood taken, a urine sample, and a cortisol test. She wanted it sent to Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic calls back and says, well, we think we compromised the labs because there's no way the cortisol levels are this high. So let's redo the cortisol test. Okay, we redo the cortisol test. Well, guess what? My levels were that high. And for those that are listening, the cortisol is a stress hormone. And typically, I forget the measurement levels, but the levels are supposed to be somewhere between 1 to about like 600 or 700 at the highest. And they vary throughout the 24-hour period. And mine were consistently 24 hours a day over 2,500. So they were skyrocketed. Yes. And they determined that I had been living in fight or flight mode for so long, basically 40 some years of my life, my whole life, that it was the cortisol causing all of these random autoimmune, they called them little
autonomic
flare-ups.
Nervous system dysfunction.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's the key, is it was my nervous system, because it was my nerves.
It was.
So the family doctor had it right. It was anxiety. It was a very, very sophisticated level of anxiety that I was exhibiting. But the problem here was that I had diminished within a 2-week period down to 93 pounds. I had always been small, 110, 120 pounds, but 93 pounds, that's not healthy. It was skeletal. It was scaring people. My skin was going gray. If I sat down for more than 10 minutes, I looked like a 100-year-old lady it would be so painful because of the way my muscles were stiffening, trying to stand up. I couldn't tear toilet paper off the roll, and I couldn't breathe anymore, even. That the doctor suggested I had to get one of those Inogen 1 machines that you carry around in a bag and put the mask on that detected your breath and, gave you some air whenever you needed it, because my oxygen levels were falling as low as 83%. And to give people perspective, during COVID, if they fell to 93% or lower, that was an indication of COVID. Mine were going down to 83%. So you combine this with the bradycardia and all this other stuff I was dealing with, I was a wreck. A wreck.
And bedridden.
And that's ultimately what made me leave that marriage, because, should it have been when he swung a crowbar at my head? Yes, it should have been. It should have been when he shot a gun outside the bedroom window, and a million other things that happened that should not happen in a marriage, never mind between any two human beings. It's just not right. But it took me getting that sick to finally realize that, oh my gosh, I'm actually worth it. Like, I don't want to die, and I'm not going to waste my
Right.
life for this man who could care less about me. He's used and abused me literally, but, it took me laying down, I'll never forget the doctor. It was at the end of 2019 sitting me down, the neurologist, and he said, your body is shutting down, Dana. You are alive, but barely. You are trudging around like a dead woman walking. He said, your hands are going numb, your arms are going numb. Next thing you know, it's going to be your feet. You won't even be able. He says, something's got to change. Whatever is causing you all this stress has got to change. And I mean,
Dana,
I knew what it was, but I didn't share with anybody.
speaking of right now, something has to change. Did any of these doctors, any of these specialists ever ask you, hey, what's going on? Did they ever give you a home assessment? What's going on at your home?
No, but 3 of them did comment that it seemed to be a lifestyle issue. I think
Okay.
that was their way of kind of opening that door,
Hmm.
but I was mum's the word. I think kind of like when I was saying, even when I met my ex, that I kind of exuded that, like, don't go there. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
Because I think, unfortunately, when you're a victim of abuse, one, you're afraid. You don't want to
Oh
be the
yeah.
one exposing your abuser because there'll be consequences. But there's also a lot of shame in that because
Sure.
I'm certainly not, weak or submissive by any means. And that's how people perceive somebody like that.
Right.
But there's just so much shame in knowing that you're putting up with
There
things
is.
that nobody should have to endure. And then the questions come, well, why don't you leave? Why do you say, and unfortunately it's like an addiction. You can't tell an alcoholic all the reasons why they should stop drinking alcohol. They have to be the ones to decide it. And it's the same thing with abuse. Nobody was going to tell me anything I didn't already think or know. I had to be the one to make that decision. And I made that decision that night after the doctor said that my body was shutting down because I decided I just remember laying there ready to go to sleep. And I just thought, what do I want? What do I want? Because this is not it. I don't want to
Right.
feel this way. I am actually a very active and very healthy eating person. I should not be experiencing all this. But I realized then that it's because my whole life, my entire life, somebody has been dictating what I could do, what I should do, what I'm allowed to do. Nobody ever said, what do you want? What do you want to do? Because if they had, and I asked myself that night, I'd gone to college. I got a degree.
Right.
I thought I was going to be in journalism. I thought I was going to be a writer. I never got to do that because my ex, God forbid, I did something that made me feel joy or achievement or have any esteem or success. And I couldn't have financial freedom because then I could leave him. And, there were a million reasons, but I never did that. He had me cleaning houses, which I'm not above. I'm a humble human being. I did what I had to do and it made income, but I was capable of so much more. He just couldn't let me think that I was. And I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to just live the life that was inside of me, not suffer in this miserable existence where I was contained like a caged bird that wasn't even allowed to chirp. So
Yeah.
that's when I realized like that this just isn't. I think when we feel unsettled and when we feel at peace and even depressed, even think about the word depressed. It's because something is pressing us down. Something is subduing something inside of
Right.
us that's just begging to come out. And it's such a shame that people feel that they have to do that to feel better about themselves. Because the beautiful thing is that, you know, it kind of got to me when the doctor said your feet are going to be the next to go because I was still that tenacious little girl even in my early 40s. I was like, oh heck no, my feet are not going to go. I'm going to run 5 miles every morning. You can tell me my feet aren't going to go. So I'm jogging one morning shortly after this, after having this vision of what I really did want in life and deciding that I just need to get out of this marriage and away from this guy and go just be me and do what I want to
Mhm.
do. But I had this, epiphany. Like I've heard people say that God spoke to them. and, or God put something on their heart. And I never really knew what that meant. I mean, I went to church every Sunday. I had a relationship with God. I prayed. I thought I was faithful, but I'm jogging and it's almost like something whispered in my ear and was like, you know how you wanted to be a writer? You know how you always wanted to write a book? This, this experience, this life that you've lived, this is your book, Dana. And I don't know
That's
why, but
incredible.
like, I went home and I had kept a journal of the things that were going on because I was scared. During COVID is when unfortunately all this happened. So I'm locked in the house with a man who has actually threatened my life. I'm suffering physically, like I might just die anyway. So I'm keeping track of all the things that are happening, but I'm like, well, I have time on my hands. I'm not working. So I started elaborating on these journal entries, writing the stories out. Well, guess what? We published that book last year, and I wrote 2 more books, and they're coming out this
Incredible,
year.
Dana. Congratulations.
Thank you. And the beautiful thing, and I think that's the most important takeaway from this, is that, you know, you said the word aligned, earlier, talking about how the
Yeah.
song, singing that amazing song, I Will Survive, aligned with my book and what I'm about, but it is about alignment. I think that when we're living in a way that does not align with who we are and who we were meant to be and who God specifically gave us the purpose and the talent and all the things that he laid before us to do. If we're not living in alignment with that, we're not settled. We're sick. We're sick in our bodies.
Yes.
We're just, there's so many ways that people, my great grandma used to always talk about like being on the right path and that there are angels that come in your life or somehow God herds you back on the right path. And I feel like I had taken a very sharp left turn. But when I got out and here I am, it's just been 3 years and 4 months later. And I'm like, no, the whole thing. I remember being a teenager and even in my adult life in my former marriage, wondering why I was here. Did he put me here to suffer? Was this all my life was? No. You know what he did? He put me through all that, but he got me out of it. I am alive. I am well. He just needed me to experience it in a way that gave me and he gave me the talents, speaking, writing. He put the
Right.
education
Yeah.
behind me for that credibility. He gave me everything I needed to basically do what I had always been meant to do. So I think that's the beautiful thing is that, I now stand here like, no, my mother didn't want me. So, my stepfather said I was never meant to exist and all this and that. No, I was. God very much intended for me to be here and he intended for me to be doing this. And so that's my life's mission now is to create awareness, to show other victims and
Love it.
survivors of abuse that, look at us. Even your story is amazing, but we're smiling and we're happy and we're okay. It didn't, whatever medical issues, whatever life
Yeah.
circumstances, you're going to be okay. You just have to believe that you are, and you have to believe that there is something greater for you out there, and you will get through it.
Oh, absolutely. And you're a grand testament of this, Dana. You're a
Well,
grand
and so
testament
are
of this.
you.
Well, thank you. So are we. So is
Yes,
everybody
we are
else and everybody
together.
listening to this. We
Yes.
all are. And I'm so proud of you for coming out on the other
Thank you.
side in just 3 years. This is incredible and very empowering. And so your health is now in alignment.
Very much so. That's the crazy thing. I get out of this marriage, and literally within a month or two, my symptoms dissipated. I don't even know the last time that I had to use my breathing machine. I don't have any symptoms anymore. Once in a while, I get a headache if I'm stressed or overwhelmed or a little bit of a stomach ache, but I don't have all this stuff. I used to have a spreadsheet that I would take to the doctor, keeping track of 24 random symptoms and their severity, because I mean, my body was just playing musical chairs with it all.
Sure
I
was.
don't have that problem anymore. And I've gained my weight back. I'm healthy and my nervous system is settling so I can sleep at night because I'm safe and I know I'm okay. And it's just amazing when you take, the negativity out of it, because I think
Yes.
that's a big part of it, is that, you know, we have to think of each other as seeds. I was planted, unfortunately, for the first half of my life
Sure.
in very dry soil. I wasn't given sunshine. I wasn't given water. I was that droopy, sad little flower that just was fading away. And now I'm in moist soil, nourished, with lots of sunshine
I
and
love it.
lots of water, and I'm choosy about who's around me and who I let in and who I let affect me, because now that I have positive people around me that are speaking, kind words to me and about me, I'm thriving, I'm blooming, and even
Yes.
my own self-talk is finally shifting from that little girl who thought she was never going to be good enough and could never do anything to, oh, tell me what I can't do because I'm going to go do it and do more.
Then I have a question. I can imagine after being in this flight and fight response your whole life since childhood, and now finally being in a healthy marriage or in a healthy relationship the last three
Yes.
years. I can imagine that some of these PTSD type
Oh,
symptoms or
yes.
come up. How do you handle this? How do you deal with this day to day when it comes, if it does come day to day or month after month or whatever frequency it is? How do you handle it?
Yeah, it took a lot of patience on my new husband's part, and even for myself, being patient and forgiving with myself. I absolutely came out with PTSD,
Mhm.
a lot of triggers, and that was the thing I hadn't expected to be such a problem, but the triggers, because it could be something you hear, you
Right.
see, something, even verbiage that somebody uses. It could be anything, and it's unexpected. People tend to isolate, and that's what I did at first. It was, I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to see anyone. I feel anxiety. Just going to stay away. But what I realized was, and certainly there was therapy involved. I did a writing therapy because I'm a writer. I'm just not a talk therapy kind of a person, but there's so many therapies out there now that everybody can find whatever works for them.
Sure.
Um, but what I found was, you have to put yourself in situations with other people. Not triggered, you will never be able to use the tools that you learn, whether you're in therapy learning or you're reading about them or listening to a podcast, whatever. You can't put the tools into use and practice them. I'm not telling everybody to go out and date and get married right away, but
Right.
even in friendships, at work, at school, wherever you go, it helped to kind of dip my toes in the water and be like, okay, I'm going to go to this event. There's going to be people there.
Yeah.
I'm really nervous, because I know that they haven't been kind to me before, but I'm just going to drive separately. I'm going to, if I feel uncomfortable after an hour, I'm going to just kindly excuse myself and leave, and just not forcing myself. I had to show myself the kindness that other people hadn't shown me before. But being around people, and even being, in this new romantic relationship, being triggered allowed me to basically fall on my face a lot as I
Yeah.
learned to put the self-regulation techniques into practice,
Yes.
to where now I can function like a normal human being, and I don't have a panic attack or some, regression in any way, that scares people, because and it's a scary thing to go through yourself, and you don't want to feel like you got to hide away from the world. And realistically, we all want connection. You can't get that if you can't figure yourself out. So I think that was a lot of it, is just learning to self-regulate. Do I still have days? Yeah, there are days, but it's certainly not anywhere what it was. I'm not crying in fetal position in the walk-in closet in the bedroom like I might have 3 years ago. Now I can just be like, yeah, that really bothered me, or that pissed me off. But you know what? It's okay. Not everybody in the world has to think the way I do, or not everybody in the world has to like me, and that's okay.
That is okay.
I'm not for everybody. I'm not enough for some, too much for others, just right for everyone else. It's okay.
So constantly telling yourself that you're okay and finding ways to rewire your nervous system and just constantly bringing yourself back. So you mentioned something earlier that talk therapy was not for you.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah, it wasn't. I've done it in the past, and I just felt that it unless somebody was very experienced with abuse trauma specifically,
mhm,
I did not feel, and unfortunately, I should say this, because of where I live, it's a more rural area. There are not as many resources, medically or for psychological purposes and what have you. So it's not something I wanted to waste my time rehashing the past to catch somebody up and explain myself. Whereas with this writing therapy that I took on, it was very effective and it was very direct. And I
it
liked
is.
the way that they approached it really head on. Just, I'll never forget the one day that it was basically a video and then a writing session where it was guided. But, it was very direct and in your face, which I respond to because I'll never forget the day she said, it's not all about you. People don't have to tiptoe around you because you have these issues and you have these triggers. And I was like, oh, but they do. If they love me, they will. And if,
Yeah.
but no, it's my responsibility to, you know, I hate to get all scientific because I'm not a scientist. I think more psychologically than scientifically. But like you were talking about, like in your brain, like when you're triggered, basically what's happening is, okay, your brain is saying, okay, here we're taking in this stimuli, and this is what we remember from all the
Right.
previous instances of this. So this is how we're going to react. We're going to go straight to the go-to reaction.
Right.
Very
Exactly.
simplistic. I'm sorry because I'm not scientific.
That's exactly the way
But
it goes.
what we have to, but it is.
It
So
is.
what
Yeah.
we have to do, you kind of have somebody explain it to me. It's like you have a fork, in the road. So your brain automatically goes to what it always has gone to.
Yeah.
You got to kind of tell it and nudge it to go that other way.
Yeah.
Like, I
You have
know
to
we
pull it.
normally don't go
Yeah.
this way, but let's try that. And I'll give everyone a quick tip if anyone is open to it. But what helped me most, simple thing, I was told to just in that moment ask myself, what do I want? Again, this is the question
Yeah.
that got me out of my marriage and made me
Sure.
realize, but what do I want? Because maybe I just wanted, if I wanted to feel safe, okay, let me go and close
Sure.
myself. Let me excuse myself, extract myself, and go in, let's say, my bedroom where I feel safe and close myself and sit for a few minutes. Do I need to feel protected right now? Is that what I want? Okay, I need to go find my husband and I need him to hold me in his arms because I feel very safe and protected in his
Sure.
arms. Do I want a popsicle? Maybe a yellow one because I like banana flavor. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
It
Whatever it
sounds
takes.
silly, but whatever it is, whatever you want, just do it.
Yeah. That's definitely
Because
that's
then it's
self-soothing. Yeah.
leading exactly. And the self-soothing is kind of nudging you in that other way and
Yes.
helping you learn to determine how to save yourself from going down that proverbial rabbit hole that, some of us tended to go through. So it took, but like I said, it took a lot of practice because there were times where I'm like, my husband's standing in front of me and all I want is for him, to hold me and tell me it's going to be okay. But then I'm trying to push him away because I'm embarrassed and all the shame and all the stuff I usually felt. And I'm like standing there paralyzed in this conflict, kind of having its war in my head. But you get to the point where now it's just like I said, now I can kind of just brush it off and just be like, that was a little bit of a like a little pinch to my ego, or, I don't like that too much, but whatever, we're going to move on. It's okay. And so again, it's just reteaching your brain to react differently, because unfortunately people, I think a lot of the shame they do hold is that they don't realize that abuse and trauma, and even the things you've been through, people that have a lot of medical issues or have been through repeated surgeries, there is, a lot of medical trauma involved in that. But whatever your trauma is, it does affect the way your brain works. It absolutely affects your biology. So, you have to understand that and take control of it and figure out how you can rewire yourself basically to react differently, because it's all in the reaction.
Rewire yourself and also have compassion for yourself.
That is the biggest thing, because people talk about forgiveness a lot. And when people talk to me about forgiveness, they're usually speaking about, have you forgiven your mother? Have you forgiven your stepfather, your ex-husband? You know what? It's not my place to forgive. Everybody has their own feelings about that. I know I'm a faithful person, and there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that people like to quote to me. I needed to forgive me.
Exactly.
I needed to forgive me for everything, for tolerating it, for behaving in ways that maybe didn't make me feel very proud of myself in those moments. Um, because of whatever reason, whatever I was going through, I just needed to forgive myself. And the only forgiveness that I hold for all the people who abused me was realizing that everything they did to me came from unhealed trauma that they themselves were not willing to acknowledge or deal with.
Right on.
They weren't willing to take accountability for their own stuff, so they put it on me, and I was carrying everybody's burden. I was carrying that weight. And now that I have forgiven myself and released myself of that responsibility, I feel much lighter, mentally, physically, emotionally, in every way, and it's great.
And also by forgiving yourself, and it kind of just led to a natural forgiveness of the perpetrator, because you were able to see their wounds because you had now forgiven yourself.
Yeah.
And so,
I
and
mean,
also when you forgive yourself, and that's self-love, and you're loving yourself
yes.
more, you are able to see in the lens of just a little more clarity. And just
Yes.
but there's something else I was going to say in regards to that. You said that something that's really important here when you're learning to self-regulate was to be patient and forgiving with yourself. And
Yes.
so and so I'm wondering, when you go back to having these triggers, do you find yourself, now that you've been practicing how to self-regulate, having less and less triggers, or just learning how to navigate the triggers more, I guess, consistently or more effectively?
That's interesting that you say that, because honestly, with you asking, I never really thought about that, but I feel like maybe I'm not, how should I say this? The trigger is a reaction, and I'm not having those reactions. So I'm not getting
Excellent.
triggered by everything. There are still some core things. And
Uh-huh.
I think the healing journey will take, rejection and abandonment, exclusion from, I mean, I've been banned and exiled like from every family because of, exposing the truth, and people don't want to face the fact that these things have happened, and that they are
Sure.
associated with abusers. But that's still a hard burden to bear, but it gets easier. But a lot of the triggers, the smaller ones, like, for example, a Sprite can, pop, Sprite, lemon lime
Sure.
soda used to trigger me. There was a situation with my ex with Sprite cans. I can be around a Sprite can now. I know that sounds silly, but there are
Not at all.
certain things
Yeah.
that, if I'm excluded, and I know the whole family's getting together, let's say for Christmas, and I'm not included in that, it hurts. but it's gotten easier. I'm not going to go cry for 2 days like I would have, a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of the triggers have diminished. I think I've dealt with them, and kind of now the reaction is natural, and I don't have to force that rewiring or that
Yeah.
redirection
Right.
to
That's
something
incredible.
different. So it's got, yeah. And it's, I think, like I said, I go back to, I understand wanting to isolate. That's our mode of protection is just, if I don't go near anyone, I won't get triggered. If I don't leave my house, I won't get triggered. Go dip your toes in the water,
Yes.
test the temperature out,
Yes.
because I promise you, if you get to the point where you can react differently, you'll feel proud of yourself. I mean, for me, it is empowering to know that,
It
like,
is
I'm in
empowering.
control. I am not reacting. I'm not letting somebody else's actions control my behavior or make me feel a certain way that's then going to physically manifest in my body.
Right.
I'm in control. Dana's got herself now, and that's not going to happen again. And it does feel good. It feels good to know that nobody can have that power to push me to those,
Speaking
extents
of
anymore.
power, Dana, actually, in forgiving yourself, you regained your power
Absolutely.
in all parts of your life. That's really
Yes.
incredible. And I mean, that's the
Well,
most
thank
powerful
you.
effect of it all.
Thank you so much. I just hope that people will see that we're all capable of this. I am not superhuman. There is nothing extra special about me. I am just wanting to be an example to people that whatever it is you've been through, like if I've been through there, I understand. I get it. Believe me, you've been
Yeah,
through stuff. Everybody goes through stuff every day. Like we all got our thing, but you can still be okay.
definitely. I love that. You can still be okay, and you are okay.
Yes,
We're
I'm
okay.
real good.
Yeah. Yeah, you are real good. So, your book, you have a prequel coming out and a sequel?
And a sequel. Yes, yes. The prequel will talk much more in depth about my childhood, and kind of dealing with what it was like to grow up with an abusive parent. It was my stepfather, but still he was my father figure. And then, kind of an uninvolved and neglectful mother in a lot of ways. Because I think it's important. The big question that has come up since my book came out, whether people can relate to it or not, people are looking at it like, well, how did you get to that point? Like, how could you let this happen to yourself? And so that has brought up a lot about the past. And I do, touch upon it. There's a few sprinkles of it in Gasping for Air, the book that's out, but the prequel will definitely delve into it much deeper. So you get a really good idea of, like, this is how I was raised. So it was almost like creating a perfect storm to send me
Sure.
out into the world as this
Yes.
people-pleasing codependent to a narcissist who wanted servitude and it felt entitlement. I mean, it was a perfect match, but not in so many
Sure.
ways. And then the sequel will deal with more like what we talked about. Unfortunately, there was also another narcissist that came along, a friend of 16 years that turned on me when I wasn't in an abusive situation anymore. Go figure. People like you sometimes better when you're down and beneath them, or as they perceive it. And so there were a lot of uh, obstacles that my husband and I had to endure. And considering what I had been through already, it was devastating, what I had gone through to get to our wedding day. But we want to show that love triumphs, but certainly self love most of all. But
Yes.
just to show people you can thrive, you can be in a healthy romantic relationship, even if you have been through some stuff. There's a lot there. There's a lot to talk about.
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is really incredible. And so, there's something I was gonna say in regards to, yes, what's the biggest piece of advice you can give people who are in an abusive relationship?
I think the biggest piece of advice, and forgive me because I keep things simple, but I always say listen to your gut, because
Sure.
it's not right. You know
Right.
that whatever if they're demeaning you and insulting you and calling you names in front of your kids, or God forbid, putting their hands on you, if they are violating you, unfortunately with narcissistic abuse, what makes it so traumatic is that they don't just, like my stepfather just physically and verbally abused me. My ex-husband sexually abused me in our marriage, financially abused me, legally abused. There's gaslighting, manipulation. You can't even process one thing before you're getting hit with another. But it's not right. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to read books. You don't have to know everything or have an education. In your gut, you know when something is right or wrong. And if it's wrong, please listen to that. And please reach out to somebody and get help, please, to get out of there.
That's excellent, Dana. Thank you so much. I really feel
You're
that.
very welcome.
Absolutely. And as you said, it's simple, but it can be so challenging for so many people. But that simple advice can mean so much to somebody that really needs to hear this. So really thank you so
Yeah.
much for your words and your encouragement, and for uplifting people that have gone through similar experiences. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
So
much.
I'd like to read a poem that I wrote dedicated to this podcast interview. It's called Becoming Voice. To become a voice, I had to find my voice. For how could I speak if the gibberish in my mind was all pain? To become a voice, I learned to embrace the inner me I had to let go, and let in the nourishments of truths. To be a voice, I stand tall in what I believe in. I stand amongst the crowd holding hands with others, seeking to find their voice. To be a voice, pain turned into love, and I give it to you. Your voice is valid too. And that's for you.
Oh, you got me all teary-eyed.
Well,
That's
thank you.
beautiful.
Really, I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you so much.
No, I love that. That really was beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for receiving it, Dana. So, how can our
Absolutely.
viewers, our watchers, our listeners find your best selling book, Grasping for Air: The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse?
Go to my website, danasdiaz.com. The link to buy the book is there. Of course, you can go on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, wherever you buy books, and get the ebook or have the book sent to you. But my website's the best place to go. Click the link. Facebook and Instagram links are on there too. This podcast will be on my press room page with other interviews
Excellent.
that I have done, so you can access it. And certainly, I always say, if you do know somebody in a situation that you feel might relate to what I have been through, a lot of people think that sending them the book is a good idea. It's unlikely they're going to read a 400 some page book, although I would love if they did. But send them this podcast. Just throw the link at them and
Yeah.
say, hey, listen to this. You might find it interesting, because you never know. It might spark them to start thinking about their own situation.
This is incredible, Dana. I'm giving you a virtual high five from LA to Chicago,
Yes,
from
sir.
Route 66 all the way down LA
It's a
to
long
Chicago.
drive, but
It is
it's
a
a
long
good
drive.
one.
I'm wishing you incredible, loving blessings to you and all of your loved ones. Thank you for being authentic. Thank you for sharing your voice. Thank you for being pure and brave and courageous. Your life is yours to hold. Your life is yours to love, and your grand testament that you are doing exactly what you're meant to do. Thank you so much for being you. I really appreciate your energy. Thank you for being on A Little Less Fear podcast, Dana.
It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for all you do.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Dr. Lino Show, A Little Less Fear podcast. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can do so by sending me an email at alittlelessfear@gmail.com, or through an inquiry from my website at www.alittlelessfear.com, where you will always find information on where to get my book. You can get my book on Amazon and Amazon paperback version, Kindle or Kindle Unlimited. And I also create incredible visual video poetry for people that are interested in marketing, or even just to send a personal note to anybody or somebody that you might love. So yeah, check it out. I love it. Poetry is my passion, one of my other passions, aside from doing what I do right now, which is giving you all the motivation that you need to keep growing, to keep motivating people, motivating yourself, and to keep expanding. I love you all so much. Have a blessed day and take care. Rock on.